Let's give our technology team a round of applause. The board met earlier in executive session for the purpose of considering the employment compensation of a public employee. At the last board meeting, there were comments that were expressed in the heat of discussion that were viewed as derogatory toward the superintendent, Matt Miller. And I wanted to take this opportunity to express my support for Matt and for his work as superintendent. I also wish to extend my support and my gratitude to Mrs. Logan, our treasurer, whose excellent service has helped to ensure that the district is financially sound. I've watched both Mr. Miller and Mrs. Logan act professionally and cordially toward all members of the board, and I have an expectation that we would all treat them in the same manner. Passionate and spirited debate is expected and it's appropriate, but derogatory statements and personal attacks directed at our administration or other board members aren't productive, and they don't help us to achieve our community's goals. I strongly encourage my fellow board members to join me in holding ourselves to a standard of mutual respect.
I would also like to see moving forward that we do treat not only each other with respect, but we keep our personal comments against the administration out of the board meetings. There's nowhere for them to belong. We are going to disagree as a board. We're not always going to agree on everything, but when we take our oath, something in our oath that we say is that we will support the will of the board, even when we don't agree. And I think we have to keep that in mind.
I think back to the time when Mrs. Logan and Mr. Miller each came into their positions and what a positive impact they have both had on the district in their tenure here. While they've had many positive performance reviews up to this point, I am confident that that will continue going forward and look forward to supporting you in that effort.
I also agree with Mrs. Schaefer, Mrs. O'Connor, and Mrs. Kelly. I think we need, as board members, to be professional and to keep personal issues out of the board. Our goal should be the entire students, the 17,000 or more students that we have, the administration, the staff, and everybody. We should be respectful, and even if we disagree, we should disagree with respect.
Thank you, Mr. Adi. Mrs. Bodie?
It is my responsibility to ask questions, and I will continue to do so. And I will do my job to the best of my ability.
Thank you. Thank you, board. We'll move on to number 5 on the agenda. That's the review of the community survey results. Board, that would be the packet that you have in front of you with Paul Fallon.
Just real quick, I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you for that. This is obviously not my comfort zone when
Yeah,
do this, especially unannounced. But thanks, and as those of you that have known me the longest, I think you know my priorities have been and will continue to be our kids, our teacher, staff, our community, and the 5 of you. So I have said I am blessed to be here, and I know that every single morning when I wake up, and we just try to do the best that we can for our kids collectively. And so thank you. I just appreciate that. But again, not my comfort zone right now.
Yeah, and I would echo that. It's never comfortable to, yeah, especially when we were not expecting it. So again, thank you for the support. And again, we'll just keep on keeping on and doing what we're
from a higher
here to do.
And
So
drills
thank
down,
you.
but I'm not going to steal his thunder. I'm going to let him talk about it a little bit more. This will help us with our strategic plan that we need to update. Also gives us some insight into some pieces of the master facilities plan. There's a finance component, but Paul, I'm going to tee it up that way and let you take it from there.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here once again. Let me start first and foremost by talking briefly about the methods. This data was gathered through a combination of secure SMS, text, web surveys, and telephone interviews performed by specially trained opinion research interviewers. The interviews were conducted during the period of December 6th through December 13th. So it's been almost 3 months ago, and we are in the midst of what I would characterize as a dynamic opinion environment. Let me recap my findings, then I'll open the floor for questions. First and foremost, the mood of the community and view towards the school system remain largely steadfast since 2016, despite turbulence that has been experienced by school systems throughout the country due to, among other challenges, the pandemic and staffing shortages. Next, performance ratings for key areas that were tested remained high and in most cases were consistent among the spectrum of various segments of the district's adult population. Next, residents' confidence in the district's management of tax dollars also remained high, but understandably at this time, they did not appear particularly attuned to finances despite their confidence. And by that, I'm alluding to the absence of any strong opinions or strong sentiments about the school's financial condition. Next, ratings for the quality of education were exceptional across the board, with most notably even a near majority of private school parents conceding that the quality of education in the schools was excellent or good, which is remarkable. Next, results regarding matters of diversity, were somewhat murky, as the rating for meeting the needs of a culturally and academically diverse student population dropped somewhat, and meeting the needs of a diverse population ranked lower than other priorities that were tested, indicating that it is an area that may warrant more exploration to provide clarity. Next, a robust majority of parents and residents, parents and non-parents alike, were content with the building conditions, but indicated they may be inclined to favor facilities improvements, with support highest among those who believe class sizes were too large, and it can be inferred may want more classroom space to be built. And lastly, most reassuringly, it was evident that the school system remains an integral part of the fabric of the community and serves as a magnet to attract and keep families in it, with even a majority of non-parents believing they were getting a good return on their investments as residents. And let me close by commenting that this is one of my one of the things that I love the most, because I get to deliver good news. Isn't always the case in a lot of communities. So this is a refreshing change from what I've had to do lately for many of my clients. With that, I'll open the floor for any questions that anyone has.
You've seen overall that if you looked at the time period of 2016 or whenever other schools did their last survey to now, has the sentiment and the mood across the board been typically a downturn or static or improved for the general school population?
Well, I can't make a broad generalization, but I would say that a lot of public institutions, schools included, seem to be experiencing a lot of turmoil, and as a result have seen their ratings change precipitously.
Looking at the top priority for people, there was hiring more teaching staff is 13%, reducing class sizes is 12%, and the forced first ranking. Is it appropriate for me to combine those into 25% believe that general sentiment, or is that an inappropriate interpretation of the data?
No, I think that's a reasonable supposition, and those are integral aspects. I should mention too, something I glossed over is that the highest rated priority at 46% was improving the quality of education. And strangely, that's a bit of a backhanded compliment because the rating for the quality of education is so stratospherically high that it's probably hard for people to imagine it getting better. But in the absence of what I infer to be any grievances, it's a default response that many people chose, but is by no means an indication that people have misgivings about the quality of education.
One thing that caught my attention is from the parents that said the class size is larger than normal. So my question to you is, compared to other school districts, is that a common thing now, or is only peculiar to Lakota?
Boy, I think that varies from school district to school district.
So can I say it's a good thing, indicating that there are more families moving to the area, or is it that we need to change our strategy in maybe hiring more teachers in that area, or what is your take on that?
I'm not sure I'm the person to talk about solutions for various concerns. It's my job to identify and quantify them.
All right, thank
I
you.
would trust Matt and Jenny for those types of answers.
Who is responsible for implementing this survey? Like, is this something that we received communication from Columbus, or is this something that Lakota decided to do on their own?
Lakota has done this periodically.
Okay.
Did you want to speak more to that?
No, you're right.
So about every 5 years, we've typically done a community survey to get the pulse, and some of the questions have remained static so that we can have some comparisons.
And it provides us feedback as we're looking at things like our facilities plan and updating our strategic plan, those kind of things.
And I mean, this has useful data, but and how do we come up with some of the questions? Who comes up with the questions that we ask?
I wrote them in collaboration with the administrative team. We began a process by which we discussed things that were important priorities to test, as well as things that we wanted to repeat from the previous survey. And then I constructed the instrument.
Okay, thank you. And then is this the only survey that you are responsible for? Are there other surveys as well that you are in charge of?
I'm not quite clear on what you're asking.
So I was kind of surprised to find with the diversity needs among other races, the percentages, with so much focus on culturally responsive teaching, DEI, and the focus on diversity, I would expect our numbers to be a little bit lower. So I kind of would like to know what is an action plan to ensure that we are meeting the needs among other races and to lower those numbers.
I don't know if lower is the right word in that regard, but I think it's a great conversation for us to have at our meeting on Friday when we're focused on our diversity initiatives.
I would like to move to make a motion that all surveys are mailed to the parents with a return envelope, and that the parents have the discretion to give this survey to their students if they choose to do so.
There is a motion on the floor to mail surveys with a return envelope so that parents can make that decision about the surveys. Did I capture that?
So they can make the decision to give the survey to their parents or to their students. And then if they choose to do so, they can mail it back.
Is there a second? Hearing none, the motion fails. All right, we'll move to the public records and sunshine law training provided by Brody Conover.
But I just wanted to come here again and provide some kind of updates and guidance to you all. Obviously, I think we heard from Paul tonight that, school boards, and not just school board, but I would say all local government is really facing some really difficult items with meetings and records and openness and transparency, and not in a bad way, but just new challenges or experiences with it. So we've been doing this with a number of our clients with school boards or township trustee boards or city councils and things like that, just to really kind of drive in on what's really relevant to you all and how we can be helpful, or kind of tips of the trade a little bit to what to expect and how to handle it. You guys speak through kind of your official pronouncements as a board. So what I mean by that is your meeting minutes are from the Board of Education. Your resolutions, your motions, things like that are from the Board of Education. So that's where you're going to be kind of speaking out. You each have your own voice individually. Ms. O'Connor, you're the chair, and you can speak as your role as the chair of the board or as an individual board member. Same thing for each of you individually. And we encourage you to do that. If you disagree with the decision, say so. But when the board speaks, if I lack of a better word, as a whole, it does so through its kind of minutes, resolutions, motions, and things like that. So speaking of meetings, that's kind of the next thing I want to cover. I won't bore you too much with all the technical details, but anytime the three-part definition of a meeting is a prearranged gathering of a majority members of the board when you're again, this is like nerdy law stuff. I'm really sorry, guys. It's like
3 hours later.
again, these are some nerdy subjects, but so that I think is all I had on my list. If there's anything from Matt or Jenny or any of the board members have questions, certainly happy to take those. I didn't bring a fancy PowerPoint, I'm sorry, but I can obviously shoot any materials y'all want.
I had a question.
Yeah.
Where do you get your training on the laws, the sunshine laws?
Me personally or anyone in general?
You personally, what you just regurgitated, where do you get your training? Is it from the OSBA or is it from
No, so I started my career at the Ohio Attorney General's office, and we have what's called the Public Records Unit, where we create the model public records policy for every public agency in the state. I helped write the Yellow Book, which is the Ohio Sunshine Law Manual. So it's kind of what every public body in the state uses. So, and I represent.
Does Mrs. Bodie, in all fairness, Mrs. Bodie, does she know that you are an attorney?
Oh yeah, sorry.
I did.
do.
Okay.
Okay.
I didn't know if you knew. That's why I was,
So
in all fairness.
I don't want to like brag, but I'm probably one of the.
Go for it.
I mean, I do this
You
more
have
than
permission. Go ahead.
I do this more than almost anyone else in the state on a day-to-day basis,
Okay.
and I've never presented even at the OSBA.
Okay, great.
Do you have more questions?
Thank you.
What do you say about policy on social media?
What do you say about commenting on social media?
I hate social media from a legal perspective. No, it's one of those things that you have to have in today's world. It's tricky because really when we focus on public records or meetings or anything like that, we don't really care what the medium is. We don't care if it's an email or a poster in a school or, a text message. What we care is what it's about. For example, a Facebook, we've got a Facebook group or a Facebook page. We will make posts and then people comment on them probably. I'm sure it's all high praise because I know how Facebook operates. But I would just say we would treat that much like any sort of correspondence that we might get.
We just are changing our practice right now for how board emails are answered.
Okay.
And so it's my understanding from the way it was presented that like a generic note will go out and it'll be signed the Lakota Board of Ed, and correct me if I misunderstood this process. And then if it so just an acknowledgement of receipt essentially. And then if it needs further follow-up, that may be done by the administration, or it may be done, again, our practice has always been the board president has answered emails. So, but if there was further note that went out answering, it may come from this generic Lakota Board of Ed email address with the answer. And then when I expressed concern about that, I was told, well, then you just reply with your own answer. But again, that then concerns me because it feels like now you're saying don't do a reply all, but if we don't do that, again, Becky Smith still knows, and then Becky Smith spreads it all around that, well, I talked to each one of them, and now, Darby, Julie, and Kelly are going to support that because they told me so, and, Isaac and Linda told me they aren't, and I don't know.
We just started another rumor, Julie.
Yeah, we generally call that round robining. And like Matt can't do that really. He can't call and say, all right, we're going to do Y. Miss Bodie, what do you want? Miss Schaefer, what do you want? Miss Casper, and do that. We generally can't do that. And then, well, I don't have the vote, so I'm not going to do it. Now, Matt and Jenny solicit feedback, listen carefully about your guys' thoughts. Whether it's a citizen gets a little trickier.
It's a pretty broad
Fair enough.
range of issions.
We'll connect on that and we'll report back through
Good
Jenny
answer,
and Matt.
Bodie.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm too far from mine.
You're good.
How far or how important is it to make sure we keep to that 3-minute limit
Again, I litigate as my primary job, and I think about what's easier to defend in a lawsuit. And consistency is important because that way we don't have to say, well, it really wasn't because of what they're saying why we let them go long. But yeah, I'd really like if you were consistent.
I don't think it's appropriate to cut somebody off mid-sentence, Brody.
Well, if you want to let them finish their sentence, this is what I always say with a judge, right?
As
They're going
close to the 3 as possible.
Yeah, really close to the 3.
Would you mind saying that way?
Really close to the 3.
For number 7 on our agenda, we are at discussion of the policy committee structure.
The 3 options are keep it with the 2 committee members we have. Last time it felt like we redid the committee again here at the board table, and that's fine, but that was all 5. And I'm not sure how I feel about that part. And then in my previous 2 districts, we had the administration work with Neola and then brought policies forth for first reading. So
To the whole board.
Mhm.
Jenny, did you have thoughts?
maybe it's too soon to make a shift. I don't know.
Right.
I think the process last time, when the policy changes were made the night before without any discussion, was hurtful to the process. So I think we discussed this with Rob, and this could be something that we try as well. Maybe a week before or a couple days before, whoever would like to make some adjustments to the policy, communicate it to one of us so that we are aware of the thought process behind the policy, and that would clear up any confusion that we had because we were unaware of the reason that these policies were being updated, because we had received a policy update, I think a week before that. And then the night before, there was a bunch more updates. So that was a little confusing. And I think that slowed the process. So if we could come up with a,
So we had talked about changing our procedures so that there was a definitive procedure, so that we could avoid some of the confusion that happened at the last board or the last policy meeting, and then I think carried over to the board meeting. So again, we've done it this way for a period of time, which doesn't always mean that we need to do it that way going forward. But when it has been successful and it just wasn't successful at the last meeting, I don't know if we try procedures first, and then if that's ineffective, move to another alternative. Or, we just completely abandon it immediately. And I don't know how that works when it's been set up during the org meeting, if it can just be arbitrarily changed through the year or
Need to be a board
Just-
vote.
okay. So, I hope that the last meeting was an anomaly, but I think until we get through those policies, honestly, I think those will continue to need to be full board discussions. So I don't know how much time we spend on those in the policy committee, but hopefully some of the more routine policies, like Neola is bringing forward, I believe 30 policies at the next policy meeting, we could potentially, hopefully go through those in a more expedited manner. And, but again, I'm open to reconsidering if it continues to not work, but I don't know if we make those wholesale changes with 3 very highly emotionally charged policies that we started the year with.
and I do ask a lot of questions, so I might need some
We've noticed.
more time.
Do we want to consider this meeting, continuing it the way we've done it and see how this meeting goes, knowing and maybe putting a time limit on the 3 policies that we know are contentious and that are going to probably end up here anyway? And first of all, see if there can be any headway made there. And if not, there should be a time limit and not hours and hours. And then here, hours and hours, let's just come right here for hours and hours.
Yeah.
And then just put, like our standard policy, the Neola policies, 30 policies sounds.
Notice, but maybe we can put those procedures in place in the future, even if it does become the whole board that has to ultimately review them in this meeting to make sure no changes come in, but maybe ask if Rob would be willing to work on drafting some revisions to our protocols.
Yep.
I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that.
So I would be comfortable with trying it again as a two board reps on it. I think if it's not effective this time, I would be very comfortable with our superintendent and treasurer, Mr. Vogelman, doing it and bringing forward ideas to the entire board rather than doing 2 whole board meetings. It just makes more sense to do that. And it could be set up as a regular part of our work agenda. So we can see how it goes this time. Does that work for everyone?
Sure.
Okay.
Good
Mr. Adi?
conversation.
Yes.
Thank you. Critical race theory. Critical race theory is a toxic philosophy that is poisoning and destroying the
Mrs.
mind and
Bodie?
souls of our children.
Mrs.
I'm
Bodie,
sorry, I have
are
the
you
floor.
making a motion?
I just wanted to get some recognition of some things. I have the floor, so if you don't mind, I would
Are
like
you
to
making a
continue.
motion?
I have the floor. I would like to continue. Terms like diversity, inclusion, cultural responsiveness, equity, cultural awareness as defined and used by the promoters of critical race theory are all
Member is
designed
out
to
of order.
replace. I have the floor.
The member is out of order. Are you making a motion? We'll be happy to listen to a motion if you have one.
This is not a motion.
Then perhaps you could save that for closing comments. We'll make an opportunity for.
I have the floor. I would like to continue, please.
I think we'll complete our business first and we'll allow closing comments at the end. Thank you. We move to our public comment section, number 9. This will be for 45 minutes. This is our only public comment section. And we would ask you to restrict it to 3 minutes. Remember, Brody will not love anything over 3 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. My name is KK Beloy, and I am the current Black Student Union President for Lakota East. And I am also the President of the Women's Empowerment Club, as well as the Vice President of Student Government, as well as the Vice President for JSA. I had a question about how students are going to learn about African American history without understanding the basic fundamentals of critical race theory, which is prohibited in the state of Ohio. The current education system limits the Black experience to the Black struggle by only educating students about the bad things that are associated with the Black community, such as slavery, Jim Crow, the Civil Rights Movement, lynchings, and the KKK. Critical race theory allows students to learn more about the stories associated with African American success. So though the topic is controversial, open dialogue in the classroom, including discussions on critical race theory, racism, and white supremacy, implies a level of honesty. Students must be able to determine for themselves how they regard social and historical issues, and must therefore be armed with all necessary theoretical and pedagogical tools to do so. If educators and Americans truly want to move forward in a more equitable society, progress starts with an honest education about the history and experience of people of color in the United States. And in this manner, critical race theory and its tenets must be considered if we are going to consider African American history as a course at the Lakota district. As a member of the Black community and a respective community leader, critical race theory is about creating honesty in the current systematic, racial, and socioeconomic inequalities that affect African Americans and students of color. It should not be prohibited to serve as a racial blanket to shield students from the truth about American racial history. It is about teaching kids how to approach, respect, and have empathy for their fellow African American students and their experiences. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Beloy. Mrs. Oswald talked about the COT issue and racial bias, and talked about the fact that local schools are responsible for the curriculum that they're teaching. And she also cited our ACT numbers with both of our high schools. Matt, would you like to say anything about that?
Well, one of the differences, and if you want to compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges, is that we require all of our students to take the ACT. Many schools do not require all students to take the ACT, only ones that want to go to college or have an interest in taking the ACT. So our scores are going to look a little bit different. Typically, you see schools where the students are all required to take it be about 3 to 4% lower or number lower. The end number would be lower when they're required to take it. And I think that kind of makes sense. The average in Ohio is 19.9 on the ACT. We're still above that, even though all of our kids have to take it. The number about 27 to get into college, I haven't heard that. I know that there are schools that take numbers in the teens to go to college. So, and many schools are getting away from the ACT. So I just want to clear that up. And I believe that's accurate.
Mr. Horton talked about social media and a concern with something that was posted on social media. And is this an attempt to intimidate parents? And again, asking for what parents would like to know, what each one of us, how each one of us will engage with them and what our intent is.
I don't think it's appropriate. I don't think it's appropriate to take a conversation that you've had with the parent and post it on social media. I think that's between the board member and the parent or the community member. That's my opinion.
I too don't feel it's appropriate, even though when notes come to us, they do become public record. I do think that that can have the power of dissuading people from writing when, depending upon people's reaction to that letter, they choose to send it out versus having it be a public records request.
I want every parent and every student in our school district to have confidence in me and believe that whatever they share with me, whether it's in private or in a form of email or whatever, I'm going to make sure it is private, because the goal is to ensure that they are heard and they're fully represented.
And as my fellow board members have said, I have spent the last 14 years engaged with the community. I'm out and about in many different roles in the community, have a chance to interact and hear what I think community is thinking. I think we all do that. I am more comfortable doing a phone call, or in fact, happy to sit down with anybody who'd like to have a cup of coffee and talk to me about what's on their mind. I don't post on social media and certainly try to be professional in my interactions. So I think that is a pretty clear explanation for where we all are in terms of how we want to be engaged with parents.
No comment.
KK, I will tell you that we were all sitting up here thinking, how does she do all of those things and still study? That was frankly amazing. I'm really happy to have you guys here tonight. Thank you for doing it. You raised a point about CRT as a part of teaching African-American history and wondering how that's going to be taught if CRT is not included. I'm going to turn that question over to Mr. Miller.
So I'm not going to go down that path. I have a question. What grade are you in? Okay. It was refreshing to hear you, and you gave us some food for thought and for us how we're going to move forward. And so I appreciate having the student voice, which through this whole pandemic has been probably the voice we've listened to the least, just because we haven't been able to break that bubble, so to speak, with getting into some of our schools. So I know that we'll be in touch in terms of some of the valid concerns that you brought up, and you give the voice for the kids. And so I appreciate that. Sometimes we don't listen as much as we should to that.
So when I hear people say we are Lakota, I think one thing that we need to remember is that yes, we have our successes, but also we have failures. And I think in order for us to be successful, we have to see our failures and congratulate ourselves in failing, because that means that we're going to learn to be successful through those failures. For someone to be in a position or be in a job and not fail and to always be perfect, I don't feel that leaves room for growth. When you fail, I think there's a celebration there, and to admit that we have areas of opportunity. And that is a good example to set for our children. I think we are Lakota is yes, we have successes as Lakota School District, and there are many successes out there, but we also need to learn from our failures so we can be better. And I think that teaches our students as well. That's I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but that's kind of like a model that we want to represent. So again, when we are Lakota, we need to also relevate or revel in our failures so that we know that we are going to be successful the next time and learn and be more knowledgeable going forward.
Thank you, Mrs. Bodie. So what I was asking, if you're comfortable with a short closing comment section, Mr. Adi?
He's asleep. Poor Isaac. He's like,
He is in a different time zone, so he may not still be with us at this point, but I'm
It's 3:30 a.m. where he's at.
It's 3:30 a.m. So he just took out a huge chunk of his sleeping time to be with us. tonight.
That's dedication. for
That
him
is
to be
That
here
is
as long
serious
as he has.
dedication. So
Can you guys hear me? I'm trying.
He probably woke up to my
I
singing
know.
voice.
I think we should make an exception, allow some applause for Mr.
It's
We're
actually
a serious rallier, really impressed by that. We're going to do short closing comments here, if that's all right with you, and we'll start with Mrs. Bodie.
okay.
Right, so critical race theory, comment. Critical race theory is a toxic philosophy that is poisoning and destroying the mind and souls of our children. Terms like diversity, inclusion, cultural responsiveness, equity, cultural awareness, as defined and used by the promoters of critical race theory, are all designed to replace concepts like personal responsibility, self-determination. Their teachings are designed to confuse and discredit rational thinking and to effectively question the concept of objective truth. The parents who see CRT in the district take it very seriously, and so should we. The question of whether critical race theory does or does not exist in our district, or to what extent it does, deserves attention. I believe this board should commit to an honest and unambiguous effort to assess and evaluate this issue and to recognize the need to remove the administration from the process, that they should remain as uninvolved as possible.
Being accommodating, but operating business as usual. And just as importantly, that the board recognize the need to utilize people and entities that have not
just an understanding of CRT, but a clear incentive to discover it. With this in mind, I move that the board, in recognition of the valid concerns of parents of the district who see critical race theory as a threat to their children and their valid concerns, that the administration's position is that those concerns are unwarranted, vote to or discuss as a board, acknowledge the dispute exists, agree to address it, and recognize the conflict of interest that exists when the superintendent or any group of administrators are charged with resolving the dispute, including being involved in the hiring of any third parties that would be looking into it. Thank you.
We have a motion on the floor. I'm hoping the board all listened to it. Is there a second to the motion? Hearing none, the motion fails. Thank you for those closing comments, Mrs. Bodie. Mrs. Schaefer?
Again, I feel like everyone continues to talk past one another on CRT. It was particularly challenging here to watch our students' reaction to that voice. And what I keep hearing about is whatever we want to call this, I don't believe it's CRT. I don't believe we're teaching CRT, but we are dealing with diversity, equity, and inclusion issues in our district, as I hope we should. As I'm at the Ohio State football game and the Cardinal Health presidents on the Megatron saying, this is an important initiative. Our employers are dealing with diversity issues. If we're preparing our kids for the future, we must continue to deal with all types of diversity issues. That doesn't make it CRT. That doesn't make it brainwashing our children. I think, as we saw here tonight, our children can be very independent thinkers, and having constructive debates within our classroom is something I hope is part of education. It's part of creating critical thinkers for the future. And I relish any classroom that's continuing to have healthy discussions. I had a teacher once tell me his proudest day was when he got 2 parent complaints, one that he was too liberal and one that he was too conservative, because he took the opposite sides in debates when the children weren't quite able to articulate their opinion. And I think, again, if we're trying to have balanced debates, balanced information and healthy debates, that is a very useful thing. Again, I've said it before with my own children who have gone through this district, one who's still in this district. I am so proud of seeing the discussions. I'm so proud of the government teachers who my kids did not know where they stood on issues personally. And they learned a tremendous amount still in those classes while still being objective. I hope we can continue to teach our children everything they need to be effective employees going forward. And I think we can't bury our hands or bury our heads on certain issues. As far as, I think we all answered the question that was posed earlier, House Bill 290. I feel I have enough information on House Bill 290 to also agree with Mrs. Logan that I am not in support of House Bill 290. If private schools and those taking the vouchers had the same rules and regulations, it would be a different situation, but they can be selective. They don't have to take every student, and they don't have the same red tape that they put on public schools. So I think until it's an equal playing field, I am not in support of House Bill 290.
In the interest of time, all of yours and all of ours, the one comment that I would like to make, other than our students are amazing, is that I don't think that I have ever heard anybody sitting at this table, or Mr. Miller or Mr. Logan, say we are perfect. I don't believe we are. I don't think they believe we are. And I do think that failures, so to speak, we look at them as opportunities for improvement. So I just kind of wanted to say that. And let's see, find something happy. The West boys basketball team advanced in the tournament. So they will play Sunday. They will play Sunday at UC. It's always fun when they can play on the big court.
6 p.m.
6 p.m.
PM, yeah.
I believe that we have a lot of work to do. And as time goes on, I am going to be committed to the entire family. I know I have a story to tell. I'm on this board because I believe I have an experience that I want to share and be an impact, positive impact in the life of every child in this school district. I want to give every parent a voice in the education of their children, irrespective of what it is. You should have a voice, but nobody should use their voice or their opportunity to intimidate or bully another child or another family. That's what I stand for. So with that being said, I want to be open. I'm going to be available to any parent that have anything that we need to talk about.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Thank you so much for hanging with us through a long meeting. Appreciate that extra dedication on your part. You know, oftentimes in board meetings, because of public sunshine laws, we don't have these discussions. We can't have these discussions outside of these meetings. And it probably looks a lot like sausage making, and I would anticipate that will continue because there are very diverse points of view up here. And so it doesn't always look smooth, and it won't. But know that I believe that the people that are up here are genuinely concerned about our students, and that we'll try to continue to keep our students' best interest at heart.
I'll just leave it with, it's okay to agree to disagree. You know, I stated how I feel about something, but I don't disrespect you if you feel differently. And it's okay to have conversations and to ask questions and to talk. That's how we learn. So I just want to say, I still believe it's okay to agree to disagree as long as we do it respectfully. So that's it.
Real quick, and I'll keep it quick. Thank you to our students who came out tonight, to all the kids. KK, thanks for being brave and speaking up. Not that you need that, because obviously you've done it way before tonight. And thanks to our parents, all parents who got up and spoke, and thank you for your words. I appreciate that. And we do have things to work on. There are a lot of things that we need to work on. I pointed some of those out tonight. Mrs. Bodie, I would just ask that if you have, you mentioned it, I think twice tonight, that you had families talk to you about a portion of the curriculum. I would just ask that you send them to me, and I can send it to my curriculum team so we can deal with those issues as they come up and not have to wait to a board meeting to deal with it. So if you could pass those along, I would appreciate that.